Dragon Ball fans are without a doubt the most loyal anime fans in existence, and while new manga and anime series rise and fall in popularity, Dragon Ball is one of the few that never fully dies out. But unfortunately, we as English and Spanish speaking fans in the West are consistently pushed aside and disrespected by the Japanese companies running this franchise, and if there is one thing that has been a total disgrace to the Dragon Ball community, it is the disaster that is the full-color manga. So after making an appointment with Dr. Google to understand why there's been such a delay in the English release, we found a tweet from 2018 where Morris Peck was asking about the delay of the Dragon Ball full-color manga. Viz officially responded saying that the reason for the delay is because each arc of Dragon Ball is licensed separately. They also stated that it hasn't been cancelled, leaving the door open for an eventual production. Now to be honest, this is even worse than waiting for a new Black & Fist video. The reason being is that from an aesthetic point of view, Dragon Ball's full-color manga is drop-dead gorgeous. It truly brings the Dragon Ball anime to life page by page with a level of artistic magnificence that makes you forget that you're reading instead of watching the anime page by page. There are so many beautiful sequences that we can spend hours discussing, but for brevity's sake, we will just talk about two. One from Dragon Ball, and one from Dragon Ball Super. And let's start with the section of the Dragon Ball manga that we would later call Dragon Ball Z. This sequence involves Super Saiyan 2 Gohan killing the Cell Juniors. Now, if you've read the Dragon Ball manga, you would know that the manga holds no punches in displaying Gohan's annihilation of the Cell Juniors, as compared to the anime adaptation where every killing blow that Gohan landed resulted in the Cell Juniors exploding due to the sheer force of Gohan's hits. But in the manga, you can actually see the disfigured bodies and the brain matter being ripped apart. And while these images were well done without color, there's something about adding color to this scene that makes it so much better. It's like the full color edition of the manga refreshes your memory of the same panels you read years ago with a renewed taste and appreciation for the manga itself. And watching Gohan quickly have his way with the Cell Juniors also adds to the effect of how dominant he was, since reading a few pages goes by way faster than the drawn-out anime sequences of him killing 8 Cell Juniors. And yes, for those of you who don't know, if you go back and rewatch the sequence of Gohan killing the Cell Juniors in the anime and examine it carefully, he did in fact kill 8 Cell Juniors due to an animation mistake. But for Dragon Ball Super, its full-color manga has many top-notch sequences as well. But the one scene that really stands out in Dragon Ball Super is the fight that Goku and Vegeta had against Merged Zamasu. Now we have to be honest, Toyotaro's manga adaptation of the Zamasu arc definitely gets the crown for breaking and rewriting all of Dragon Ball's rules for the sake of one fight. But we can't deny its extreme creativity in doing so. To be specific, we are talking about the scene where Zamasu was regenerating into various clones while Goku and Vegeta are at breaking point. But the beautiful thing about this scene is that it takes us directly into the anime, and to be specific, it takes us directly into the Dragon Ball movie, The Return of Cooler for us English-speaking fans. And to be precise, we're talking about the scene where an army of metal coolers are rushing towards Goku and Vegeta when they have next to no energy left to defend themselves, but are willing to go down fighting. And seeing the colored versions of so many merged Zamasu simply adds to the helplessness of the situation, especially since Zamasu didn't do this in the anime adaptation and instead became a phantom-like being with no physical body. And while Zamasu is still a major threat, even in multiple timelines, there's something about strength in numbers that runs chills down your spine and adds a lot more tension to the actual sequence itself. But apart from its aesthetic beauty, the colored manga also provides fans details about the original manga as opposed to the anime. Let's take a quick look at the Trunks the Lone Warrior chapter. In it, we can actually see with our own eyes that Trunks was a Super Saiyan before Gohan died, and seeing it originally in black and white was a bit vague as to whether or not Trunks was actually able to become a Super Saiyan. But in color, it's definitive, and seeing future Gohan also laying in a pool of blood adds another graphic nature to his death that can be interpreted in a separate video itself. So even the little things and details like this further add to why the full-color manga is so awesome. But now that we've demonstrated the value of the full-color manga, it's easy to see why taking so long to produce physical copies in English is a disservice to fans. regardless of whatever licensing issues might be the cause of it. Especially since the Dragon Ball full-colored manga was completed between 2013 and 2016, around the time that this channel even began making Dragon Ball content. And the sad truth about the full-color manga is that theoretically, it should sell very well in the West. When you consider the fact that Westerners, especially Americans, have so many movies, cartoons, and comic books depicting various superheroes from various universes and media, you would think that maybe, just maybe, a color manga would be a top priority for a culture that loves colored media, especially an already established anime and manga series that's already popular and doesn't need to be promoted like a new manga or anime series that people haven't really known about in the West. For crying out loud, if you look at the series My Hero Academia, it makes perfect sense why a Western-styled anime would become so popular in the West as compared to other anime that remain mostly popular in Japan with only Western otakus watching it religiously. It's because My Hero Academia is based on superhero-like characters, and for a culture that promotes a lot of superhero characters from the Marvel Universe all the way to DC and more, it makes perfect sense why Americans would have an attachment towards a series like this, especially when you have a character like All Might who is the stereotypical American character. So for these so-called money-hungry companies, they certainly don't seem hungry enough to properly maximize and monetize its Western audience, forcing us to ask a very serious question. How long will it realistically take for the full-color manga to be properly licensed and produced in English? Especially since it's already finished, and it really only needs to be translated. Well, since it's already been 8 years, there's really no telling as to how long this is going to take, but as we continue to wait patiently, 2 problems have been created. Warning! This video you are currently watching is about to mention things many would consider politically incorrect. The first problem with taking so long is that it encourages piracy. The full-color manga has taken so damn long to be produced that fans have taken it upon themselves to actually translate the entire manga from start to finish. But as Dragon Ball fans, we must be honest in our evaluation of how well the translation actually was, considering that it wasn't professionally done. So to break it down, let's create a scale from 1 through 10 in evaluating how good the translation is in general. So let's start off by saying that Dragon Ball elitists want a perfectly translated manga that would be considered a 10. Then you have loyalist fans who want something above average but are willing to compromise with anything below perfection, and let's consider these fans an 8. Then you have collectors who just want it and don't really care about the specifics of the translation as long as they can get their full-color manga, and consider them a 6 on a scale of 1 through 10. With that said, we can safely say that fans have been able to produce about a 7, and while it's definitely not the best, this is what happens when you take too long to make something. The fans rise up, work together, and produce something virtually that can't be produced physically. And this leads us directly to our second problem, which is spawned from the first problem. If you take too long to produce the manga, people won't care anymore because they already read it illegally and already have it downloaded. So in 20 years when Black and Fist decides to upload I Have Gray Hair and the full-color manga is finally produced, it would have taken about 30 years to produce this, and we would have had decades of already reading through it by that point. Unfortunately, the worst part about all of this is that the Dragon Ball Super manga is currently being produced, and the big problem with all of this is that it's basically a pipe dream to expect a professional physical copy translated into English during your lifetime, because if it takes 8 years just to produce 2 arcs in English because of licensing issues for the original Dragon Ball manga that's been out since the 1980s, when in the living hell do you think it will ever be produced for Dragon Ball Super? You're fooling yourself if you expect it within the next few years. So the truth of everything is that change only happens when people honestly speak up and stop being silent about these issues that have been plaguing the Dragon Ball community. So to all the companies running this Dragon Ball franchise, in the East and in the West, this is a message to you from the fans. Get your fucking shit together and give the fucking people what they fucking want. And while you're in a negative mood and want more videos that tear Dragon Ball apart, make sure that you check out Goku Is Not a Hero, Or what if Launch was still around in Dragon Ball? And if you want a character criticism, you're definitely gonna love the Supreme Kai Sucks. And until next time, stay cool and stay safe, my friends.